Hi everyone, and a huge welcome to you all watching. You're watching another episode of the Raising Positive People series, delivered by me, Olivia Edwards, the Positive Parent Coach. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about emotions, emotional delay, emotional regulation, and the responsibility of feelings. Now we're going to cover this because it comes up quite a lot when I'm coaching and supporting parents. I see it a lot on social media, and there can be some quite conflicting information and some information that perhaps isn't that helpful at times. So hopefully this will help to clear that up. So sometimes as a parent, we can project our feelings onto our children, and we do this unconsciously. We're not thinking I am going to project my feelings onto my child. It slips out in our language, in what we do. And really, unless we can take that step back, be really self-aware, and consciously look at what we're saying to our child and what's going on, we can find ourselves repeating these generational cycles and habits that are a bit more negative and probably things that we're trying to step away from. So what I'm talking about in an example would be if your child was sitting at the dinner table and kind of, pushing their food around their plate and not really eating anything, which I'm sure lots of you can relate to. You might comment and say something like, "Oh, please eat your dinner. If you don't eat it, you're going to make me feel sad. I've made that for you." And so what you're doing there is you're trying to get your child to eat, but you're using the projection of your feelings onto them. And what that's saying to the child is, the way I feel and my emotions is your responsibility. And it's absolutely not. The only person who can take responsibility for how you feel is you. And that can be really hard to hear. But if we're not regulated emotionally, as adults, as parents, we cannot possibly support our children in their regulation. You can't really parent successfully if you're not able to try and regulate yourself. And that's because if you're not able to have that emotional regulation, you can't stop yourself from responding and reacting from your emotions. And so if you find yourself in positions where you're really easily triggered by things your child does, or you find yourself snapping or shouting, or you go from 0 to 100 really quickly, often they're signs that we're leading with our emotion. And so we can do some really practical things in order to set ourselves up for success. What I'm going to talk about before that, though, is why you might experience that, why you might feel that way, because there can be a lot of guilt attached to it. And I'm really conscious that delivering episodes like this and talking to people like this, if it resonates with you, I don't want you to enter that guilt and shame cycle. So you're not a bad person at all, and there's a reason why you react like that, and it's more than likely come from your own childhood and how you were parented. And that's why all of this series and everything I do with parents is about changing that cycle and breaking those habits. So you might find that as a child you weren't able to talk about your emotions. Maybe as a household you just didn't discuss emotions. They kind of got swept under the carpet, that very British traditional stiff upper lip, if you like, attitude. Perhaps you were told when you did show emotions that you were being too sensitive or you were really dramatic. So you learned to keep your emotions in. It was safer to withdraw and suppress your emotions than to let them out. So that's what you just learned to do. It could be as well that perhaps your parents didn't have great emotional regulation, so they would project a lot of their emotions onto you. So you might have actually felt that a lot of the time you were just accommodating your own parents' emotions. You could have been providing emotional support to them. Maybe you were in a situation where you were forced to grow up slightly quicker than the ideal, than your peers, and perhaps you were even praised for that. Wow, look how grown up you are, and this is amazing that you can do these things. So you step into that role, and that can be the start of this snowballing effect of becoming a bit of a people pleaser. So you might find that that's something else that you need to work on in terms of boundaries, and recognizing that, okay, I'm putting a lot of my value and self-worth and validation on pleasing other people. And that can go all the way back to your childhood. So I'm not going to talk too in depth about that, but I wanted to cover it because I want you to try and understand the root of that, where it comes from, so you can unpick it and work on it. And so you can step away from feeling guilty about it and understand that, okay, that's where that comes from. That's the way That's why I am the way I am. Okay, maybe I want to change that. This is a pattern, a cycle of behavior I need to break. Let's get support with that. So that's why I covered that. In terms of how do we support our child and ourselves in that moment, so that you're not projecting your emotion onto them, you want to try and regulate your own emotion. So finding what works for you in terms of being able to stay calm and making that a priority. So it's non-negotiable. So that might just be time alone, some space, exercise, eating well, listening to music, spending time with friends and socializing. It's very much going to depend on whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, where you get your energy from. So learning that about yourself and being aware of that, and making sure you're finding time for those things so you can keep that cup full. You can release your stress bucket. So hopefully you're getting enough sleep. I know I've talked about this before, and you've heard lots of messages around that. So sleep is a really big one. So you just have more patience, more tolerance, more ability in that moment with your child when they're really pushing your buttons or they're not doing something that you want them to, ignoring you, for example. You can just take a step back, calm yourself, so regulate your emotion, acknowledge how you feel. That's really important. So if it's making you angry or frustrated or sad, I would acknowledge that internally so that you can make sure you're meeting that need later on. But in this moment, you want to acknowledge it and then think, what do I need to do right now for me and my child? It's not about them meeting my needs, it's about me meeting their needs. So if you've got a scenario where perhaps your child isn't listening to you, because this is obviously a really common one that comes up a lot, rather than saying to them, it makes me feel really sad or really angry or cross when you don't listen to me, and projecting that feeling onto them, instead you could offer curiosity. If they're a bit older, I'm wondering why you're not listening to me. What's going on? I've asked you to pick your shoes up. Can I help you? What's happening here? Being really calm, being really open and warm in your tone, your body language, offering support, because maybe something's going on with them that we haven't realized. They've had a tough week at school or a tough day at school, and they're tired or they're hungry. Perhaps they really haven't heard. That's the other thing. Sometimes our children are really engrossed in whatever's going on, and they're very easily distracted. They could be having a conversation with you and suddenly a butterfly goes past the window and they're off in their own little world. So making sure you've got that active listening skills and the communication there, you're role modeling those things. So you're drawing them into the conversation, making sure they can hear you, and then responding. So there's lots of ways around that and strategies you can use to make sure that one, you're meeting your needs, so you're not projecting those onto your child, and also you're able to assess the situation for them, meet their needs in that moment, and make sure that you're able to regulate, so that you're then able to help them regulate through co-regulation if they're a younger child, through role modeling if they're slightly older and able to regulate themselves, but they just need a bit of support in terms of how they might do that from you. So I hope you found that helpful. Please do tune in to watch some more episodes on some other topics. And if you want any further information on how you might support your own regulation or your child's regulation, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you very much.